Hi, welcome to Empty Nest Creations. My name is Wendy. I'm the owner and creator of Empty Nest Creations, and I want to welcome you to my page. Tonight, we're going to be working on some sewing machine boxes. I recently went to a outdoor flea market with my cousin in Texas. I see these all the time in thrift stores, and they make really cute accents. Pieces that you can decorate around your homes. So what I've done to prepare these boxes is first I cleaned them out. They were really dusty and dirty. None of them came with knobs, so we're gonna, some of them will have knobs when we finish and some won't. But what I did was I cleaned them really well, and then I took them out and I gave them all a good coat of shellac. And that's just going to help to keep any of the tannins from coming out of the wood into our paint. Okay, so for box number one, this one has a little bit of rippling in the bottom. It's not too bad, but what I'm going to do with this one is I want to just add some little feet. So I've got these little half rounds, and I'm not really sure what size these are. But any size will work, and you can use any kind of knobs. You could even use complete round beads if you'd like, just to give them a little feet. I'm going to glue them to these pieces that are flat so that the box will stay level and flat. And what I'm going to use is this glue that I bought. I got it off of Amazon, and it's by Tay Tools. And it's called extra thick 10 to 25 second glue. It's max secure. I don't know if you can see that, a little bit of glare there, but it comes with the glue, and then it has an accelerator, and this just helps it to dry and set up really fast so we can keep working. Top off, but now I have it off, and so I'm just going to apply a little bit of this glue to the bottom of each half round, and I'm just going to glue it on. There are all sorts of things that you can use for these feet. Little candlesticks that they sell at like Hobby Lobby and Michael's. You can get them on Amazon as well. Those make really good if you want it to sit up taller. I just want this one to have just a little bit of space, raising it up off the table just a little bit. Okay, so just a little glue on each one, and I'm just lining them up with the edge of the drawer so they don't stick out from the side. And then we'll use a little bit of our accelerator spray. Just help that dry really fast. That's all that takes. Now, before we paint, I will wipe that off with a wet wipe. So let me put that out of the way. We're going to set this aside and let that set up. And we're going to go ahead and mix our paint. So what I'm going to be using for this one is some Sweet Pickins milk paint. And I'm going to mix two colors. I've got the color Love Bug. I don't know if you can see that. There it is, Love Bug, which is a yellow color. And then I've got the Flour Sack. I'm going to do 1 scoop of each of those. And then it's equal parts powder to water. And you want to mix it up and let it sit for a few minutes. And so we'll go ahead and get this mixing. So I'm going to do 1 scoop of the Flour Sack. And then we're going to do 1 scoop of Love Bug. I'm just leveling it off. Okay, we'll set those aside. And then it's just plain water. Nothing fancy. This is just tap water, and we're going to do 2 scoops of water. And then we're going to mix that up real well, and we're going to let it sit for a few minutes. So I just use a plastic knife. And I'm going to mix it really well, making sure to get all the clumps worked out as much as possible, and scraping the sides and the bottom as I go, just to make sure we get it all mixed up. This is kind of thin when you first mix it, and it thickens as it sets. So you want to stir it for a minute or so. Okay, we'll set that aside, and we're going to let that set up. Now the other thing that we're going to add to this one, I am going to put a knob on this one. So it does have a hole drilled in the front. And so we are going to put a knob on this one when we get finished. But I previously poured some molds. And this is the Classic Elements mold from IOD. So we're going to be using a couple of the molds that I poured out of this one. And I just used the Amazing Casting Resin. And what I do when I'm making the molds is, if I have extra of the resin, I just go ahead and pour it up, and then I can use these later. So I have all these different little pieces here. And I kind of went through and decided, tried them all out, and so like for one that I'm not going to put a knob on, this one would be really cute to just go in the front as a little medallion. But the ones I chose for tonight's project are these 2 little swirls, and we're going to put them right here around the around where the knob's going to go. And that's not real straight, but I'll get it straight. So we'll set those aside. Now we're going to go ahead and work on these. And I'm going to use that same glue. So let me grab that again. Put these on the front. And by the time these get set up, we should be ready to start painting. Okay. All right. So I want them to be a mirror image and just sit around that hole. So I'm going to put them really close together on here. And I'm going to turn it towards me so I can see what I'm doing, and then I'll show you when I get them attached. So I'm just putting a bead of this glue on here. And this glue holds really, really well. I've not had it come off of anything. I'm just going to set that on there. I'm going to stand it up so I have time to work. Get that other one put on, and then we'll spray it. Okay. Let that set. I found if I don't put this right back in the package, I lose it. Don't know why, but if I put it right back in the package and set it back there, it should be fine. Okay, so that's what we have. And those are going to set up, and in just a minute we'll wipe this down with a wet wipe, and then we'll be ready to paint. So this has been sitting for a few minutes, so I'm just going to go in and just wipe around these feet just to make sure that there's no residue from that spray. I'm also making sure this is old wood, and so it keeps getting like lint on it, or I keep finding lint on it. So I'm just trying to pull that off as well as I go so that it doesn't interfere with the paint. I'm just wiping around the casting. Okay, so that's what we have so far. So we're going to go ahead and start painting now. And I'm just going to give my paint another little stir now that it's been sitting up and getting thick. Now, milk paint is really unpredictable, but I found that if I do spray it with the shellac, it tends to stick better to the wood, and it gives me the look that I'm going for. I like the crackle, but I don't want it to all chip off. So there's some other products that you can use to help with that as well, like the Extra Bond, but I've never used that. I just use the shellac because it does help with any bleed through as well. So we're going to go ahead and just start by putting a coat on here, and I am going to paint the bottom as well as the top. So I always start with the bottom, and I'm just going to give it a good coat of this paint, and it will take more than one coat. This is a thinner paint. It goes on, the first coat goes on pretty thin, and then once you get that coat on, the second coat seems to stick a little bit better. So we're just going to get it a good coating here. Getting around those feet really good. The one thing that you do need to watch for with milk paint is drips, because it is a thinner paint. You can get drips and runs, and so you want to make sure you're trying to catch those as you go. You can always sand them down, you know, when you finish with it, but it's a good idea to go ahead and just try to catch them as you go and smooth those out. Okay, so now that's dry, and that's what our first coat looks like. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to put on a second coat. Just going right over that other coat, making sure to watch for those drips and runs. This is a light color because I added the flour sack. It's a little bit lighter, but I wanted it to be a light yellow. So this is exactly what I was looking for. Now this time on this second coat, I'm going to go make sure that I'm going with the wood grain, and I'm going to keep all my brush strokes going in the same direction. Will give a smoother finish. Now, milk paint is not going to be a perfectly smooth finish. It's not going to be a perfectly even finish. It's just doesn't work that way. But this will give us a little bit of a smoother finish just by making sure that the brush strokes are all going in the same direction. Okay, so there's our second coat. I'm going to go ahead and dry this one, and then we'll move on to the sides and the top. Okay, so that's all dry, and now that it's painted, you can really see those ripples down here, but those aren't going to affect anything at all. So we're going to flip this over, and we're going to go ahead and paint the outside, and we're going to paint the top edges, but we're going to leave the inside the natural wood. Okay, so I'm going to start out just by painting the sides. Okay, so here we are. Can you see that crackling that's coming through there? That's what milk paint's known for. So we're going to go ahead and just put a third coat on. I think I have just enough paint to do a third coat. Okay, so the box is set overnight. Everything is nice and smooth and cured really well. So you can see here, we've got some nice crackling going on. Maybe a little chipping here or there, but we got some nice little crazing going on here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take some fine grit sandpaper. We're just going to smooth out the entire surface. So let me grab my sandpaper. So I have two different grits here. I've got a 220 and then a 320. And I'm just going to start with the 220 first. And I'm just going to go lightly over the entire surface. And I'm really just wanting to smooth it out. This helps with any thicker spots or brush strokes that you might have on your surface. So we're just going to sand over the entire thing. And this is the stage where if anything's going to chip off, it'll chip off now. And that's good. We want anything that's going to chip off to chip off before we put the finishing waxes on it. Okay. And when I go around this, you just need to be a little careful. Okay. So there it's all nice and smooth now. Just that little bit of waxing, a little bit of sanding. You can go back in with a higher grit sandpaper, but I don't think it really needs it. It's nice and smooth. So we're going to move on to our next step. And I'm just going to take a cloth and I'm just going to wipe it off. I want to get all the dust off for our next process. Okay, so now it's ready to go. And we're going to use a transfer. So let me grab my transfers. Now this is an IOD transfer set. It is called the Rose Botanical. And it's just got a bunch of different florals in here. So I'm going to cut these out into individual transfers. And the beauty of this is you can cut them apart. You can use pieces and parts. You don't have to use the whole transfer. So once you figure out where you want your transfer to be placed, you're just going to peel the backing off. And you're going to lay it down on your surface. Now you want to make sure that when you go to lay it down that you have it exactly where you want it and laid out how you want it to be on your image, because the back of this is a little sticky. And so once you lay it down, some of the image will start to adhere to your surface. And so you just want to make sure that you have it where you want it, because sometimes repositioning could be a problem. You're going to take your transfer tool. This is just a little plastic stick that comes with your transfers. And you're going to begin rubbing your image down. And what I like to do is go over the whole thing before I start lifting the paper. And once you've gone over it, then you can start lifting. And I'm just going to go over this edge. So I'm just folding it over, and I'm just going to rub it along those edges, and the whole transfer can go on this bottom piece. And then I'm going to start lifting the plastic, the carrier sheet, and as you lift, you'll see that it's adhering to your surface. If you start to pull it up and there's some of the transfer still left on the carrier sheet, just lay it back down and rub over it some more until it adheres. Okay. And once you've got the entire image down, then you just want to rub it in with your finger. Now you can do it with the carrier sheet too, but sometimes that this carrier sheet might pull up some of your image, so you just want to be very careful. Just go over it with your finger, gingerly press it in to make sure it's all adhered. And then we will cover this. We'll put a protective coating over the top of this when we're finished. So we'll move on to our second transfer for this side. And we're going to use these little creamy roses. Okay, so to complete this project, we're going to wax the entire piece. And this will seal, like I said, it'll seal the milk paint in, but it'll also seal in the transfers. We're going to use a natural wax, and then we're going to use an antiquing wax. Now these are both by Country Chic. What I do is I have a couple of like pickle jar lids that I just keep around in my craft room, and to keep from contaminating my wax, I just scoop a little bit out and put it in here, and that way I'm not dipping back into my wax. It doesn't take a lot, just a little tiny bit. So we'll put that in there, and then I just have, these are really old. I've had these brushes for years. I use the same ones over and over for my wax. So I'm just going to get a little bit on my brush, and then I'm just going to start working it in. So now the clear wax is on. Set that aside, cover that back up. So we're going to buff it just a little bit, and then we're going to put the dark wax on. So this is just an old piece of t-shirt that I use for my waxing. And so I'm just going to rub all this wax in. And you notice I'm trying not to touch the box now with my hand. If you touch it with your fingers, you may get fingerprints in the wax. So if you do that, just make sure you buff back over it real well, because they will show up. Okay. So now we've covered the entire surface with the clear wax. So now we're going to move on to the, oops, the wrong one, antiquing wax. I'm just going to put some of this in my lid. Now I'm going to start by just swirling this around the edges some. And I'm going to do this in sections. So I'm going to come right back and buff it. So I don't want it to sit on there too long. And if you feel like you got too much in one spot and you want to lighten it up some, you can go back in with the clear wax, and it will help to bring some of that back off and lighten it up a little bit. So here's one side with the dark wax. Okay, so our box is sat again overnight, and the wax is dry to the touch. It's not cured yet, but it's dry to the touch. So what we're going to do now is finish it up by putting a knob on the front. And I just went through the knobs that I have and tried to pick out one that I thought would look best. So I have this white porcelain one that I could put on there, but I think it's too stark white for the dark wax that we put on this. And then I have this old brass one, and I think I'm going to use this one just because the color of it kind of matches better, and I don't want it to shine. This one I feel like goes with the piece more than the other one does. So we're just going to put this on, and then this one will be finished. So there we have the knob on, and that just kind of blends in with the finish on this piece. And so now it's ready to use in my decor.